Hey everybody, what's up? It's your boy MJ. Welcome to the Black Wine Guy Experience. My guest today is winemaker, environmentalist, outdoor enthusiast, and founder of Turning Tide Wines, Alisa Jacobsen. Alisa is a 2001 graduate of UC Davis with a degree in viticulture and enology. And in 2003, she was hired as employee number 1 at Joel Gott Wines. AJ would go on to serve as VP of winemaking at Joel Gott, overseeing all winery and vineyard operations. And during her time at Joel Gott, she would also spearhead projects in Argentina, Chile, Italy, France, and New Zealand. And in 2018, she launched her own label, Turning Tide Wines. Welcome, Alisa.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. We're getting to do this.
Yeah, pretty exciting. I love being back in New York, even though it's still sort of the middle of harvest for me. But, you know, quick trip in and out.
Yeah, definitely. Tell everybody about the wines we're drinking this afternoon. What'd you bring?
So I brought two, actually, of my brand new wines. The first one that we're drinking right now is my certified CCOF organic Sauvignon Blanc. So this was always something that I've been kind of really spearheading, not just the farming practice, but I wanted to make sure that I could sort of note it on the label as well. Like, this is certified organic. It's not just a marketing ploy. This is, you know, what I believe in. This is how the wine was made and how the grapes were grown. This is a 2021 from the Central Coast of California, and Central Coast of California is where I currently live, in a place called Pismo Beach, and I bought 2 vineyards down there at the end of 2020, and I make my wine off of those vineyards.
Sweet. What's CCOF stand for? Because I'm sure there's some listeners to this podcast who doesn't know. I barely know.
Yeah. It's an organic certification, and so it's the certification that is most well known.
So it's California.
Yeah.
What's it stand for? She don't even know. So that's what I said. Yeah. She was like, you know, it's who I am. It's my shining moment.
The main certification agency, but I can't think of it right now.
Awesome. So you know, Now I got to do some more work. I'm going to have to look it up and put that in there and then show notes. For those who want to know what CCOF is.
Yeah, good thing you edit this, right?
There's no edit. I told you. Josh, you're going to get fucked on this one.
We're coming for you, Josh.
All right, so let's start at the beginning. Where'd you grow up? Where are you from?
I grew up in the north coast of California. So it was a little farming town about an hour east of San Francisco. And I grew up around cherries and pistachios, and I was in the local 4-H, showed my lambs and hogs at the county fair. So very, like, you know, country girl growing up.
What's the name? Does it have a town?
The
name have a town? Does the town have a name?
The town's called Brentwood.
Okay.
And it's
not to be confused with O.J. Simpson, Brentwood.
That is correct.
Guys.
That is what I always get. Yep. Kind of why I didn't mention it.
No, but like, I mean, I wish I grew up in Brentwood, L.A. It would mean something about my parents. I have amazing parents, but right. I should say it would just mean, well, you know, it's a nice neighborhood. So Brentwood, it's this little town. What's like the closest? So it's how far from San Francisco, you said?
About an hour east of San Francisco.
Okay.
And it's near the farming town called Oakley, where there's a lot of old vines and Fidel.
Yes, I've heard of Oakley.
You might have heard that. Because it's really sandy soils out there, and the sandy soils made it so the little root louse called phylloxera wasn't able to travel through the soils to kill off the vines from, which is why there's still a lot of old vines there.
Right. So. I don't want to get too wine geeky, but that's like a lot of the own-rooted stuff is because it's the sandy soils.
Normally, right? Yes, exactly.
So I read somewhere San Joaquin Delta, so it's a whole farming thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you grew up around cherries, pistachios.
I did. Corn. We were home of the Corn Fest in Brentwood.
Brentwood Corn Fest.
Brentwood Corn Fest. Brentwood Organic Corn.
By the CCOF.
Yep. The California Federation of
California Corn Officers Farmers. What did your parents do? So you're in a kind of like a farming community. Was your family in the ag community? Or
they were more family farmers. My dad was an engineer and my mom was a school teacher. But we grew up next to commercial cherry orchards, and so when I was a kid, we used to go out and sell cherries on the street. We'd go out and pick cherries off the trees and go sell little baskets for people that are coming in from the city.
So was that like it was like you could pick cherries, so you'd pick them,
Yep,
and then sell them to the people from San Francisco.
Yep, exactly.
I like it.
But I think just growing up there, I really realized that California really does feed a lot of the U.S. and it's the farmland there is super important to preserve, but also to make sure that we're farming in a way where we're not using a lot of chemicals or chemical farming. As far as like you're around people, you're around houses, and then you're feeding people whatever is on the fruit. So I think it's super important to make sure that you know what you're drinking, what's going in your body, what you're eating, and how things are being farmed.
So, how many in family? How many? You have any siblings?
Yeah, I have a younger brother that lives up in Idaho.
Okay, very nice, very nice. So, you're growing up. You're next to these farms. Is that what had you major in viticulture and enology at Davis?
It is. It's the reason that I went there. I knew I wanted to get into agricultural somehow, and that's UC Davis sort of had that open opportunity. Whether I wanted to go into the like more of the animal like medical field, like veterinary discipline, which I definitely took some classes on that as well. But it just sort of opened my mind up of, hey, there's so much out there, and I really loved the way that I could have gone into raspberry farming or blueberry farming or whatnot, a lot of different disciplines I was sort of studying, but I really loved the idea that you could like churn grapes into something. So I love that every year was that time capsule. It captured, what happened that year. Was it a hot year? Was it a cold year? You really got to see the production of that sort of vintage versus just making like, raspberry jam or something. So I love that it turned into something because I was 18 when I was in school. I didn't fall in love with the passion of wine. It was more like the farming and the environmental side of things that I was more passionate about. And then over the years, I got to really love wine because of what I said. I think it really is like that encapsulates, everything that you did in the vineyard and everything that happened during the growing year.
Totally. It's totally saving time in a bottle, like that song.
Yeah.
Did your parents drink wine? Was wine on the table growing up?
It was a little bit, yeah. I think they always enjoyed it, and, during the holidays and kind of special occasions, yeah. And definitely, I was always supported in the direction that I wanted to go in.
So, what's Davis like? Because I had someone else went to Davis. She actually majored in psychology, and then we went
okay.
But like, what was it like being from the North Coast and then going to Davis?
It was. I think the best thing about going to Davis was the community that we had. It was. I want to say I graduated with about 20 people, so it was pretty small, the viticulture and enology program. But I knew everybody so well, and we were roommates, and we did wine tastings, and we were probably the most, social, partly because of our, what we were getting into. Like, let's go drink some wine at somebody's house this weekend.
Research.
We're doing research. So I think partly because we were the most social, because of what we were doing, but also we were in these really tough classes. We were in all these like really crazy like pre-med classes with people that were, really trying to get themselves into like major medical schools. And, we were just there to drink wine. So, I think we had that like joint, like, wow, we're, the science part of it, I never thought I would really get into, but I loved it. It's like, this is how like the earth was created. This is, physically like what is all around us. So I think the science, I kind of really got like geeky about it when I was there. 'Cause that's really what, Davis didn't like take you out in the vineyards and teach you how to drive a tractor. You had to kind of do that on your own. It was really about the like background in science, so you could kind of figure out, troubleshoot along the way. You learned about yeast and bacteria and, how vines are grown. And so it wasn't really like the hands-on practical side of it, but it was really like the background of it.
I think that's fascinating because like all the movies about wine are just super sexy, right? It's in the vineyard, somebody's falling in love, But like there's a whole like you're talking about, like there's this I've met winemakers who are like, I'm farmers, there's farmers. There's farm winemakers and there's scientist winemakers.
Yeah.
And then there's obviously there's that's got to be a scale people fall in between, but like it's just interesting that you turn on something about wine and it's just, this was beautiful and we're on this rolling landscape and rarely, and if they do mention like pests, it's just kind of glossed over. It's like it's not like fuck fermentation stuck. Oh, this shit out, blah, blah, like or we had a heat spike, we had to pull the grapes, right? So I just think that's really like how much science you had to go through to get your degree. Like, not that you don't need a degree to make wine. Everybody, okay, I got that, but it seems like around the world, even there's a Bordeaux, there's a university and there's universities in Italy, there's university in Burgundy, and a lot of the younger winemakers have gone to university and studied. Their parents maybe didn't, but around the world they've studied it. And now they're coming back and bringing some of these best practices, right? So you traveled. What did you do when you got out of school?
I did do a little traveling. I did do a harvest job in Australia, and mostly so I could go diving on the Great Barrier Reef.
So yeah, you're an outdoor enthusiast.
Yep.
What the hell is a Great Barrier Reef? I'm sure I saw a National Geographic special on it once, but like, why is it such a big deal to people who dive, and just being an environmentalist?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things about that. So. The reef is really shallow, so they call it a barrier reef because the ships can't get through it. So it's really shallow off the coast of Australia. But one of the things about why I'm so glad that I went there when I did is because it is starting to have more kind of tourists that have harmed the coral and some of this bleaching from the sun that's starting to cause issues. And they say it's not nearly as we didn't do a very good job of protecting it over the years, and so it's not as well preserved as it should be.
And it's just like a natural formation?
Big natural formation underwater. It stretches for, I think, a pretty good chunk of Australia. Like half of Australia has the Great Barrier Reef, so there's lots of places to go on the reef and go diving.
When did you get into diving?
Oh, when I was about 16. My grandmother, who's definitely been an inspiration over the years, she didn't know how to swim, and she learned how to scuba dive when she was 65 years old. It was one of those, like, conquering her fears. I'm going to go out into, like, the most, like, crazy ocean up in the Mendocino coast, Northern California, where it's, like, really cold and murky, and I don't know how to swim, but I'm going to learn how to scuba dive. So when I was about 16, my grandma and grandpa took me out, and we were doing a lot of, like, back then when you were allowed to do abalone diving, we were abalone diving along the coast. So that's really what got me into it, and seeing like this crazy underwater world. It's just a whole different world under there.
That's freaking amazing. So where was your harvest? Where'd you intern down under?
I was in the south part of Australia. I worked night shift with all these it was a larger winery, and there was lots of scary spiders and snakes cruising around at night. That was one of the main things I remember. But it was a good experience because I was really able to see a lot of, back to, Davis didn't really have the hands-on production side, so I had to do a few harvests kind of in the cellar in the lab and really understanding some of the day-to-day of the mechanics of how things work in the cellar.
Was that your first time doing that, or did you work any harvests during the at Davis? Well,
I did. I worked 3 harvests while I was at Davis. I worked 2 harvests at a little sparkling wine place called Corbel, and then my 3rd harvest was at Schramsberg. So I really started in the sparkling wine world.
Yeah. So what? Yeah. Let's talk about why the sparkling wine world? Just they were hiring. They offered me a job.
Well, sparkling wine, you do pick it earlier,
Okay.
and so you're able to get through harvest earlier and go back to school.
Got it.
So there was a logistics part of it as well. But I mean, I love bubbles. I think that I'm making some right now up in Oregon. Actually, I think it's one of the places that really grows Pinot Noir and Chardonnay well. And so I made a sparkling wine out of Pinot Chard and Pinot Blanc last vintage, just to kind of get myself back into that world. But if I drink anything, that's like the main thing that I drink.
And so Corbel's huge operation. What size is Schramsberg? Because I know Schramsberg used to be served at the White House.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's how it got famous. Yeah.
But a little bit scaled back in the production versus Corbel, which has just got to be millions and millions of cases.
Yeah, but it was good. I think, logistically, the larger operations are kind of exciting because there's this puzzle that you have to figure out. So that I think is interesting. And then I got to experience the super hands-on at Schramsberg, which was basically me and one other cellar person that were doing all of the pressing. The sparkling comes in like so hot and heavy like during this short period of time that you have to kind of run the presses 24/7. So they had me and one other person running around the clock to get all the pressing done at Schramsberg.
And this is all new to you because there's not like a pressing class at Davis, right?
No, definitely not.
It's kind of wild. I'm just putting this all together. It's so funny. Because it's viticulture and enology, right? But like, where do you learn how to press? Where do you learn how to do pump overs?
Yeah, no, you definitely had to learn that on the job. And so it was about a lot of. So once you finished your degree, you had to go do some hands-on work. And so I did that. I worked at, and then I worked in the lab in the cellar at Joseph Phelps for 2 years as well.
Okay,
just
so
after I got out of college.
So that's another. That's a pretty iconic operation.
Mm-hmm.
So what does someone do in the lab at a winery like Joseph Phelps?
So the lab kind of goes along with watching your fermentations. So you're watching how the yeast is fermenting your wine and making sure that it's going the direction that you want it to go in. Us winemakers kind of you take a little bit of a hands-off approach and just kind of guide the wine, I would say, more than steer it. And a lot of the lab analysis is about watching how much sugar, watching your temperatures and your fermentations, watching what your acid levels are at, and just sort of kind of a little hands-off quality control, kind of double-checking your taste palate.
And so did you do anything with like winemaking there, or is it just strictly analysis at Phelps?
We all sort of worked together on a wine team. We definitely did a lot of tasting together. Craig Williams and Sarah Gott were the two winemakers at the time when I was there. And yeah, they both were really supportive of trying to teach everybody that works in the lab about tasting, because your palate is, that's the number one thing you really have to, sort of build. And the more that you taste, the more that you sync up with other people and how they're tasting and talk about what you taste, the more kind of practice you get on that.
So let's tell everybody, give them like a primer on how to develop your palate. How should someone develop their palate?
I mean, first is practice. You taste a lot. But then you also need to pick out. You need to really think about what you're tasting and pick out flavors. And that's why we do that. That's why we, talk about when I'm tasting passion fruit. It really is about trying to sync those flavors with something in your mind that kind of jogs your memory. And that's how I can go through 20 different wines and, kind of put them all in my memory and go back through, okay, I liked 1 and 3. And I think that's a lot of it is just that practice and really putting that sort of those words into your kind of memory.
Yeah, it's like developing your mental Rolodex.
Yeah.
There's people who don't know what that is.
Your phone now.
Your mental Filofax. You go even early to make myself even older.
Right? The Dewey Decimal System?
Yeah, exactly.
What's that?
Exactly. Go to the card catalog of your mind. But it is that, right? Because when you taste it, I'm like, what is that? I know that, and you're like, that's not lemon. It's it's lemon zest or whatever, or no, it's I was like, guava is a passion fruit. It's something tropical, right? And and then tasting with other people, there is this validation. That's why you want to have a good tasting group,
right? That
you're going to get, because no, it's no, that's passion fruit, not guava. Oh, okay. And then you go, and then you kind of put that in your mind. So you're doing Phelps, Cab, Sauv. They do everything though, right? Cab, Sauv. They do pretty much. I mean.
Yep. And a lot of Rhone varieties. I think that's kind of where I started.
Here's the Mistral Rhone blend, right?
Yep. That's where I started learning a little bit more about the Central Coast, because that late Mistral blend was a lot from the Monterey region. And at the time, I didn't really know why. You think Napa is, the place to be.
Yeah.
But I got to learn, actually, Napa's great for Cabernet, but there's a lot of other regions that are great for other things. And I think, that's when I first started seeing, Grenache and Syrah was coming out of the Central Coast, and thinking wow, these are really amazing, spicy flavors, cool climate that you don't get from those kind of riper areas. And I thought that was pretty cool. And I started getting more interested in kind of the southern regions.
So you said something is Napa really good for Cabernet, or does everybody pull up all those great old vines after the Judgment of Paris? I mean, is it really good for, yes, they make great, but is it really? Because there's lots of other shit planted there, right?
There is a lot. I think Cabernet does do really well in Napa. It's warm enough to get Cabernet all the way ripe. And Cabernet is a late budding variety, meaning that it's a late ripening variety. So you do need a warm climate to get Cabernet ripe. There's a lot of other fruit there. There's some great Sauvignon Blancs that come out of some of those deeper soils by the river. I think, some of those are really nice. But I think more and more people are trying to experiment with different varieties up there.
Do you think that's driven by climate change?
I do think that it has. We have seen that it's gotten warmer. Even looking at this vintage that we just went through now, Napa finished picking their fruit, weeks ago, and the Central Coast is still. I still have some Cabernet to go pick when I get back. So it definitely seems like it's getting warmer all the time. And we're trying to do different trellising techniques, meaning the way that you're training the vines in order to shade the fruit a little bit more so it doesn't get as cooked by the sun. So there's a lot of kind of things we're playing around with to try to make kind of the growing season longer. Because as soon as it gets warm, you kind of have to. You're picking the fruit fast as soon as it gets hot. So any way to sort of keep the grapes on the vine longer will help develop those flavors more. So we're looking for ways to shade the fruit so we don't have to pick it if a heat wave comes.
Gotcha. So you're there, and you mentioned the name Sarah Gott. Joel's wife?
Joel's wife, Sarah.
So you met Sarah. How'd you met Sarah, and then she introduced you to Joel? Where was Joel working at the time?
So Joel's background was in catering, and restaurants, and
that's another light bulb. I'm like, is this Gott's Roadside?
Yep, it is.
I was like, oh wow, and I Googled it, and him and his brother. I was like, oh shit.
Yep,
before we dive
famous
into
for the ahi burgers.
Yeah, the ahi burgers. So so obviously you've been there a number of times, right?
Once or twice.
Okay.
I'm familiar.
Oh, you. That's right. When did you become a pescatarian?
I grew up that way. Yeah.
Okay.
So I can't tell you about the burgers.
So you
about
can't
the
settle
ahi.
the In-N-Out versus Gott's Roadside Burger.
No, sorry.
Damn.
They're selling the Impossible Burger now too, though. So.
a lot of that stuff is it's more so because it's so processed to me. Like I'm like, is that better than grass-fed beef? Actually,
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like
no, I agree.
Because I was that kind of vegetarian vegan where I was all the Morningstar stuff and the late OOs, and I realized like, is that actually? I mean, But anyway, but that is good. I mean, but California, I love the ahi burger. The Habit had a good ahi tuna sandwich.
Yep.
We
love our fish out there.
Yeah.
We have a lot of good, fresh fish and oysters and California's pretty.
So he's doing that. He's in catering. His wife this is good enough. So his wife was actually a winemaker.
Yeah. So that's where I learned. That's the first few years. I really learned a lot. Working under her.
So you worked with her at Phelps, and then what'd she say? Psst, 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 we're starting our thing over here.
Well, they were doing their thing, but it was pretty small at the time. But they were having their first child, and it was a harvest baby. Because of course, you're gonna have a kid, you might as well do it during harvest, right? Just make everything more complicated. Just make it harder. So then they invited me to come help them, so they could get through the harvest baby. And then I loved what I was doing. I really enjoyed meeting all the people that I was meeting through that opportunity. I was, through the 20 years that I was with Joel Got Wines, I was making wine all over the world, all over California, Oregon, Washington. And I really got to meet a lot of great people, and I learned so much along the way. So I'm super appreciative about all of that.
So let's unpack all that. So you're there, harvest baby. What wine were they making that? How many wines were they making that first vintage? Do you remember?
I think it was about 3.
Okay.
We were doing a Amador County Zinfandel, a California Cabernet, and a Sauvignon Blanc.
Okay. And tell me about it. Why Amador County's in for that first one? Why?
Joel grew up in Amador County.
Okay.
So that was background. His dad was the winemaker at Montevina. So Joel grew up, unlike me, that went to school, for learning the science background of it. He was super impressionable, driving tractors around and playing around the cellar as a kid, which was awesome. And so you start learning that, he learned that passion at a young age of being around wine from growing up around it.
Okay, so she's in full-on harvest baby mode. You had learned from her. Were you just kind of like, okay, you got it, AJ?
I mean, I really think what I loved about being there, and what's one of the changes that I'm currently working on now is I love the team. I loved really taking the new staff of people and training people. So all of my assistant winemakers I had along the way, I love being able to train that next generation of female winemakers. I wanted to kind of give back, and I feel like that over those, I had 35 employees at the end when I was there, and now I just started leasing my own winery this year, so I have a brand new place to make wine, much smaller than what I'm used to. I have a staff of 3 there right now, and it's so fun to be able to bring that back and bring all that experience back to my own label and what I'm doing now, and really start training the next people. So I'm all about the team. I love bringing people along, and I think that's one of the more one of the things that that I get sort of the passion from, and that fulfillment from, is helping and training people.
Yeah. So how did you build out the team? Because you ended up being VP of winemaking there, but so you get through the first harvest. Next year, what were you, assistant winemaker? Kind of give us the progression, because you were there for almost 20 years, right?
20 years.
That's a long part of your life.
It is a long part.
It sets the stage
life, yes.
for turning tide.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think a lot of it was because I was traveling around all these different areas, all these different locations.
And were they doing that so? They started in 2003. So what was their first vintage? 04, 05?
Their first vintage was in 96.
96. Okay, so you started in 03. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That was my first vintage.
Okay.
And I think throughout finding all these different growing regions is kind of what started making kind of our staff grow too. So, building a team up in Napa area. But then as we started seeing, wow, there's actually a lot of really good fruit in the Central Coast and good value too. Unfortunately, there's a lot of great, like I was talking about, Sauvignon Blanc in Napa, but land values are so expensive there, and there's not that much land left. So it's really hard to find property. So realizing there's some great climate areas in the Central Coast that's really not as well known. It's not Napa. So we were able to find more good quality fruit, to put in those value blends. The further sort of south I started going into the Central Coast. So then I built a team down there. So we would have a vineyard and winemaking team in the other areas that we were working in, and then started kind of going into Oregon and Washington, and then I built a little team up in Oregon as well to make all the wines up there. So kind of as I was spreading out, looking for more vineyards and more opportunities, that's kind of how we started creating these little satellite kind of wine groups, people.
Wine sells.
Wine. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, wine super sells, exactly.
Back to my favorite word. What was that?
Yeah.
What's CCOF mean again?
So you're building out these teams. Where do you think what was your philosophy? So you did mention one, you seem very mission driven, values driven. So obviously with your CCOF, Turning Tide Wines, but you also said empowering the next generation of female winemakers. Like, how did you're building out a team, kind of like, what was your philosophy, or did you read, did you read a leadership book? There's a good book out now by Rudy on hospitality, or just, it was just something natural. Like, how did you what was you're putting together a team?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of instinct involved. It was a lot of, what do, back to your earlier question, what did the younger person, what did me of 20 years ago wish that I had more of? And I think, kind of looking back to that of, okay, this is, a way that I can give back, a way that I can kind of, teach what I was taught. And yeah, part of kind of passing your knowledge on from generations. It's how your legacy lives on, I guess, that way.
You don't have a group, 20 silly ass questions you ask them?
Not like yours.
Yeah. Just throwing it out there. As you expand.
Although I'm going to need to start doing that.
As you expand Turning Tide and the AJ labels.
I'm going to send you a new list. Yours were a little tricky.
So when was the first time for the GOTS you went overseas on a project? So, because like I said, you did a project in Argentina, Chile. I know you'd been to Australia before, but when was the first time you was getting that money and you was going to work?
I think, I would say one of the main places that I spent the most time at was in Argentina, and I think that's kind of where I started learning a lot too. Part of why I loved going to these different wine regions is that you're taking that information back, so you're always learning. And even though each region is totally different, that's what makes you learn. Why would you do it this way? And so asking a million questions. Why are you growing your grapes like this? Why do you put these in Argentina? They get these crazy hailstorms in the summertime, so they have to put on this sort of sheet cloth to protect the grapes from these hailstorms. So just interesting, different the way they make their Malbec down there. The Malbec is really nice from Argentina. The climate is just sort of in tune to it. And they don't have a lot of their, we call them clones, but a lot of their clones, the type of Malbec they have down there is just unique. We can't take that and replicate that, but I think that's cool. That's what really gives you that sense of place. And so I think building my Turning Tide wines, I'm really looking for this sense of place of you can't make this flavor from anywhere else. This is really the spot. Where you can taste the soil and the environment and what's really there. And I think that I think I learned a lot of that from traveling around. You know, Cabernet in one place tastes totally different from Cabernet in a different place, and I think that's what makes it really unique and interesting.
And then what was the project in Chile? Also cab stuff?
It was Pinot. It was Pinot from the coast.
Really?
Yeah, from the Lleida region of Chile. And it was very similar to what we would think of in our sort of Sonoma coast. The climate in Chile, you know, Chile is just sort of a flip-flop of California.
Yeah, I've been told that.
Yeah, so it's very similar. Similar soil, similar climate. But that being said, because of the plant material and the water, and there's still so many things that are unique to just those regions. So Lleida, even though it might look like Sonoma Coast, the Pinots still taste a lot different.
What are some of the differences?
I really like some of the rusticness, and I think it could be some of the volcanic soils too that they have there. You know, whatever's the minerals that are in their water, but there was just like this. It just felt it was alive, and rustic, and the textural. I thought it was super interesting and different.
Italy, was that Italian varietals, or was that just more like super Tuscan stuff like Merlot, Cab, in Italy? What were you working with there?
That was interesting because I was actually I went over there with this company that kind of Bridget here now works with, and we were the first winery to actually package in Tetra Paks. So it was Joel's partner Roger Scamigna that I was in Italy with, and we were learning how to do these Tetra Pak wines because the Tetra Paks they're much lighter to ship, meaning like you can carry more than glass. So it was a way to be sustainable. So we brought Tetra Paks back.
What the hell is a Tetra Pak? I mean,
it's like your soy milk box.
Yeah.
It's like your.
That's why. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And so they're totally recyclable too. So having that lightweight packaging is like all key to sustainability. And that's what I'm doing on my Turning Tide wines as well. Like, you know, back when I was like learning in Napa, you have these like really heavy, like big bottles, right?
I'm so
like,
bad for them. I love a heavy bottle. It's just,
see, but that's
it's
part of the problem.
Punt, the whole thing, you know, the 55 milliliter cork. I mean, it's so just like.
I get it. It has the romantic.
It's the romantic.
Quality
I mean,
of it,
I know it's I'm a bad person, everybody, but it did so true. Like it's like you know.
You pick up a bottle of wine, you go to pour it,
yeah.
you realize it's empty.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like so heavy.
It's so
still.
heavy. Yeah. Exactly.
But she's so humble though, because that was really the people that brought that over.
Yeah, you know, thank you. I should have got Bridget a mic here, because I mean, let's seriously like talk about like this is like a key part of like we have plenty of time, just so you know, we're gonna get to Turn Tide, but like again, this sets the stage. Like I've seen Tetra Pak, I'm like, is she talking about like the box wine thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, come on,
Yep.
man. Like,
Yep.
talk about how exciting it was in Italy to do what you were doing, and why was it Italy? Why did that come out of Italy?
You can tell her about Raj too, and like
Yeah, right, exactly.
Raj, if you went there to watch Raj,
You guys are like, this is a great episode because everybody's gonna be like, "Who's that woman in the back? I can't hear it." Like MJ, no, it's so funny. It's I kind of want it to be that way. It's like like
it adds a little bit more intrigue.
It's like the people are like, "What's going on?" She just got her a mic. But yeah, thank you, Bridget, for because I'm like, you're just kind of, I get it, but like. That's a big deal, right? If we're talking about sustainability, if we're talking about climate change, it sounds like you were spearheading that in the States. So who's this guy, Roger, who's Joel's partner?
Yeah. You know, Roger and Joel, they were like this, my second day of working at Joel Got Wines, I met this guy, Roger. And Joel sends me over, like, go meet up with my partner and, you know, you're going to go out to Lodi and bottle jugs. And I'm thinking, like, I was just making insignia at Joseph Phelps. And now I'm going
I know,
to
see,
bottle
that's nothing. I
jugs.
was like, do I have to, like,
I don't.
throw up alley oops to her all the time? Like, you worked at Phelps. Like, talk about insignia, you know?
like I'm trying to be.
Yeah.
I'm
like, all right, you know, she's like, and then I worked there, and I'm happy. And you are happy, but, like, yeah, so we'll get back to Phelps. But, okay, so you meet Roger's his partner, right? And that also, I think that's interesting because there's always... I don't know if it's always, but there's always like a money guy and a business guy, and there's a creative guy.
Yeah.
And this business, I mean, it can work, but like it works so much better when you got like some guy with money who believes in what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure.
So Roger was his partner. Did Roger have a winemaking background? Did he come from a different field? Did he just?
No, he was a .comer, and so he right. You called it. But no, he's super creative, and I think that was.
Where did he work?
That was a lot.
Was he like an early Dell, AOL? Because like
Realtor.com, maybe you've heard of them.
So it was Home Store.
Home
Okay.
Store.
And it
Yeah.
turned into Realtor.com.
Yeah,
Yep.
and she'd be like, and then I met Angie. She's from Ohio. Fucking Angie's List, you know. She doesn't know her, but this is like what this conversation is like. It's not a flex.
No,
We're telling your story because people want to know how you got here, and it's like, all right, so yeah, Realtor.com. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. So we.
and he's a dreamer. He's like a marketing genius dreamer. Sorry, continue.
No, so he. So I got to know him in this as Joel's partner, and about a month later, still 23, like when I started, and Roger's like, I want to go to Italy. There's this conference called Vin Italy. I'm gonna go buy some wine, and Joel was like, I don't trust this guy. Like, he doesn't know anything about wine. You better go with him and be his handler, basically,
Yep.
which is what she
was the Kris Jenner.
I was Roger's handler. So I had to go make sure that he didn't buy wine that
Vin Italy,
wasn't good.
one of the biggest
Yeah.
wine. What is it? Expo? What is it called?
Oh my God, it's huge. It's
Again, we're gonna
Yeah.
It's honestly a very over the top drunk fest.
Yeah. Well,
But it's amazing.
that
And
there's
it's
wine
Italian,
that happens,
so it's like
and it's
everybody's
in Europe,
eating
yeah.
and drinking and
right.
having fun.
Okay,
and
so
so
you're
that's where we went over to meet with people to figure out where can we package this? Where can we make Tetra Paks with like delicious? We started with Trebbiano, delicious wine from like northern Italy that just like, good fun table wine, and that's what Europeans do so well, I think.
Now, we're gonna get into this, but why is it that really good box wine comes from like Italy, Spain too? Spain's got like sick old vine, Monastrell, what's that wine? Viura, like these incredible old vine wines in boxes. Why is that? Why are we behind here?
Well, I mean, it kind of goes back to somebody
really,
that wants a really big, heavy bottle and a big punt.
I mean,
no, I mean the same reason that
what you saying?
the same reason that screw caps took a while to sort of like take off. Everybody thought it was cheap. It felt it.
I mean, it is cheap, but you know what? Less cork taint, and it's easier to like.
But
I can
over
screw
the
that
years,
back on
yeah.
and put it in my bag and not worry
Right?
about leaking.
Yep.
And you can
You
bring
go.
it on a boat.
Yep.
Mhm. You don't have to remember your corkscrew.
Yeah.
Some people have a hard time. Like, I mean, corks aren't always easy to, to pull out. So this is, screw caps make it so it's easy for people. And Tetra Paks are the same way. Like,
Now, was
you
that
take
his
them
idea?
camping.
Did you go over there with to Tetra Pak? Like, how did Tetra Pak?
That was Bridget's boss Roger's idea.
Okay.
To go with the Tetra Paks.
And he was he's very passionate about bringing that over to the United States.
Okay, so it was existing over there, and you guys. Okay, I want to bring it back. Okay, so continue. You're at Vin Italy. You're eating and drinking. You're what's the word? Yeah, I don't want to say babysitting. I don't want Roger to be offended. No offense.
He won't.
Yeah. But babysitting by a 23-year-old.
Yep. Somehow I was the babysitter in that relationship.
And so, like, you what did you guys put in Tetra Paks from there and bring back over?
So we ended up putting in some really fun Northern Italian Trebbiano white wine.
Yep.
And then once we learned and figured out the technology, we packaged it in the U.S. So we started packaging. We did a Cabernet, and I remember trying to figure out because it was at a company that they hadn't packaged wine before. They were packaging soy milk and they were packaging soups and all these different things. And so I had to figure out with this this kind of packaging company, how we take wine through that process. So that was pretty cool. That was one of those fun things, like the opportunities that I had, because we did so many different like crazy ideas incorporated, but then I had to kind of, send AJ off to go figure out how to get this done.
Like what? So this is where that science stuff comes in. So like
Right,
what are
yep,
some of the
exactly.
challenges you initially faced?
Trying to make sure that we keep kind of those oxygen levels low, because that wasn't as important for soups and soy milk, but in wine, when you're bottling, you do want to make sure that you're keeping your oxygen levels low as you're bottling. So not a lot of air. You're trying to like prevent any air from getting in, because air will age your wine. So trying to figure out along the process of how do we do that? How do we make sure that we're not picking up oxygen along the way? Yeah, super cool, interesting, and yeah.
And again, she's being super humble. We became a brand called Bandit, which was a pretty big, right? And
Yeah, I've seen Bandit
so
at my local Whole Foods.
And Whole Foods was huge
that was
on
how Bandit
Why?
started.
Should I just?
She's very humble.
I know you're humble,
I'm trying to get it out of her. I'm trying to see her sound.
Bridget's so funny. I should get another mic.
I'm gonna have diarrhea of the mouth. I just want to
Yeah, no.
That's
listen.
why we didn't give her a mic.
That's exactly right.
Well, listen, we should have, and it's all good because I think it's great. Your humility it's wonderful. People should be humble. And, this is how people like, you're fucking badass. People need to know.
That's what she is.
Okay. So, that's why we're here to tell your story. And
Yeah,
so like it's not in the bio. It's not about Bandit.
No. And then that became a TV show, like for a nanosecond.
Yeah.
For a nanosecond,
And
it was a
then
TV
there's-
show.
Oh, it was a TV show? Tell us about the TV show.
No, I
She
wasn't in it.
part of the TV show.
Yeah.
But then, what she doesn't, what she's very humble about is it became an entire category. She started an entire category of 500 ml, 1 liter Tetra Pak. And that was really because of Raj and you and what you guys and Joel. And
I'm just gonna interview PR people from now on.
I know, right?
Us
winemakers are like
that's
behind
not
the
true.
scenes
That's not
people.
true. You're just super humble and kind of shy.
is.
That's all.
She's
I mean, yeah.
She's not braggadocious.
Yeah, it's not, but it's not bragging. You
like
you
you're
created a freaking category. Why should people buy your wines? Because I created a whole category.
Yeah, because I'm a bad bitch.
Yeah.
That's a mic drop.
So that's amazing. Still see Bandit. It's still in Whole Foods, blah, blah, blah. And
It is.
and that deal makes sense because they're about whole planet and sustainability. So they're looking,
Yep.
And I don't know, like I would have never known you were involved that way. I mean, listen, you said it. Screw caps, box. I've had, but immediately the mind goes, that shit's cheap. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's the
just where our
perception.
mind goes.
The perception that we
Yeah.
have to change, I
Yep.
think. It's not,
Even though Plump Jack's had a screw cap since like, I don't know, 99 or some shit, crazy shit like that, 2000.
I mean, good for them for being one of the leaders of trying to, change that perception.
So after you create a whole new category of wine, what was the project, or what was the project in France you worked on?
Shatter?
What's that?
Was that Shatter?
There's a couple different ones over there.
Freaking A. Because I was going to say, so I'm reading this. Guys, this is how this show goes. It's just a conversation. You guys know that. It's just, this is what it is. I didn't want to get Bridget because Bridget would steal the show from me even, which I love. I'm looking at this Argentina, Chile, Italy, France. I'm like, who the fuck? You're like, the only person who does this shit is Dave Finney.
Yeah.
And then Bridget goes Shatter, which was the Côte de Catalan Grenache that Joel did with Dave Finney. So you worked on Shatter?
Yeah, so we bottled it in the U.S., and so my team and I worked on, yes.
Okay, so why would Joel Gott want to team up with Dave Finney?
What did Bridget say?
I'm not. I'm looking at. She said nothing.
Yeah, simple girl from the Midwest.
Exactly. Some girl.
No, I I think it's also about friendship. Some of this stuff is like,
of course,
you wanna like work on projects with people that you enjoy,
right.
And like you don't need to be out there like you know, I didn't put my name on the bottle here, although I do have a bottle called AJ, but you want to be out there. It's supposed to be, you know, you're supposed to be having a good time and working with people that, you know, share what you want to do. And yeah, somebody might be a little bit more creative and somebody might have a little bit more of the, you know, financial or production side. But generally, I mean, that's kind of what he did what he did too.
Yeah.
I mean.
So what happens? He gets us. So Dave Finney was the original prisoner.
Yes.
The original prisoner. I have to state that. That guy's a machine. He sold so many brands.
For clarifying that.
Yeah. Just because I have to tell people that because that was a winemaker's wine when it first started. He was young. He bought whatever grapes. It was really good. He just bought whatever he could, and he threw it together. It was in the tradition of like mixed blacks, old vine field blends is what it was. And then he sold that, and then he did locations because he liked to travel. So he did wines. You know, and he did an AR, an NZ, an F, an I, you know, for Italy, France. And then he had so much money, so he was down in France somewhere, and he just saw this Grenache, these old vine Grenache, and it's like black citrus soil. You know.
Yeah,
this,
I mean, super rocky.
So he goes, you know, Joel, they're friends. He's like, oh, you know, we should do a wine together, and Joel goes, you need to go look at this crazy soil. So what was this like? How did it go down?
No, I mean, I think that was one of the you know, fun wines that was something totally different. I think because the vines were they were struggling in this like rocky soil. So the vines are the grapes are super concentrated, you know, when they're struggling like that. So you have this wine that was, you know, big and bright and bold, and you know, from a whole different region that's. Yeah, super unique. Like back to you know, every area, every, you know, vineyard, you know, should really show like where the grapes are grown, and that one really shows. That's super unique to that area.
You know what? We're gonna pause here. We're gonna get AJ to show her super uniqueness when we come back from this break. So we'll be right back. Okay, we're back, and Bridget's talking again. She probably heard that. That's all good. We're talking about rocky soils and sense of place. What did
Time
you?
for some Pinot.
What did you just pour me?
I just poured you my brand new wine called Rare North, and this really highlights
Willamette,
the
damn it.
Willamette Valley. Exactly.
I have to say it that way. I'm from Jersey. I was like, Willamette.
Willamette.
They're like,
Yep.
it's.
If you go to Oregon, you have to say Willamette. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Willamette Valley is super interesting. It's one of the few rivers that actually flows north, and so that's part of the Rare North concept. But also, I mean, what's so cool and crazy about Oregon, and why I love Oregon Pinot, really is the climate up there. You know, it's all of the soils come down from the Missoula floods. There's a ton of volcanic soils, lots of like nutritious sediment from those floods, from, you know, ancient back in the day floods. And it makes
like
the wine
Noah
super
and
unique.
the Ark.
Way back then. Yep. All the way back then.
It's the only back in the day flood I know about. Thank you, Jesus. Sorry. Anyway, no, that's really cool. So
I wanted to highlight Willamette as a region, and I think that my Turning Tide, I have a regional Eola Amity, like very site driven, very site specific. Love that wine, but I wanted to really highlight the whole region, and so I'm working on a vineyard up there that I help farm in the Mount Pisgah AVA, the brand new Mount Pisgah AVA. Speaking of Noah and the floods, Mount Pisgah was an old. I guess it's somewhere where like Noah landed or something like that. I don't know.
I'm older than you, but they did this like search for Noah's Ark, like it landed on a mountain. Was that
something
the mountain
like
that landed
that.
on?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wanted to highlight the whole area because I think the Oregon Pinot is so unique and so much different. You know, a lot of people say, you know, you're from California. Why aren't you making a California Pinot? I just really think that I think that they're super unique, and the fact that the Oregon is so much further north, they have these really long days, and that daylight, that sunlight, really creates these super complex wines, along with all the soil-driven terroir they have up there.
All right, so what was the impetus, or what? I don't know if impetus is the right word, but why turning tide? Why are we like now? Why was 2018 the time to do it?
2018 was actually I started with an Oregon Pinot Noir in 2018, and because I had this opportunity to buy this fruit that I thought was amazing. Oregon is like the original sustainability place. It's because of the amount of rainfall it gets, you really don't have to irrigate, so you're not, pulling water from precious resources. And the farmer was farming in an organic and regenerative way, in ways that I really jived with. And I think some of the best things that happen in life are things that are more spontaneous, that you're not,
Thank God you're here,
out.
Bridget.
I know, right? She's spontaneous, right?
I am just spontaneous. I'm a type A spontaneous person.
So it just sort of naturally happened. It was something that it found me. This vineyard found me. I thought it was a great, amazing fruit, and I really wanted to, play with my winemaking skills and see how I could take that and kind of highlight the region.
Were you, like you said, it was kind of like serendipitous. I mean, did you know? I mean, obviously, in the back of your head, you want to make wine, but was that were you prospecting when you went up there, or you just
No, it was
it literally kind of stumbled upon it?
I stumbled upon that vineyard. I really thought. I was always prospecting for Joel Gott wines. I was always looking for new regions and looking for new fruit and new opportunities for the wines for Joel Gott wines. And so sometimes you would find things that didn't fit into that.
Did you find that when you were making your Pinot Gris?
Yeah.
She made a Pinot Gris for Target, and that I sold, and that's
how I got to know Bridget,
because the buyer was from Oregon, and she.
Okay, so let's talk about. Thanks, Bridget, for that, because that gave me the context.
So as I was up there looking for sort of Pinot Gris blends and vineyards to put into a Pinot Gris blend, I found this Pinot Noir vineyard.
So had you had turning tides in your back pocket, waiting for the right moment? Like, let's talk about the name, how it aligns with your values.
Yeah. Well, something that was very personal, and actually the first vintage of that wine I named after my grandmother. That was, as I was talking about, she's really the one that inspired me to, kind of don't have fear. You don't know how to swim when you're 65, jump in and, get in the ocean, the most dangerous part of like California. And so my first vintage, actually, I still have a little bit of that wine left, just to kind of for her memory, but. I named it after her, Irene. Turning Tide, I really started evolving when I realized this is a wine that I'm going to get behind. And I want to make a Chardonnay that also balances. So I started making a Chardonnay that balanced my Turning Tide Pinot. And I think part of that was, I realized that this was going to be something that was like my passion and my personality. And Turning Tide really is a reflection on my love for the ocean. I've talked about scuba diving a lot. I love paddleboarding. I love being around the water. But also all the vineyards are water influenced. All of my wines are low in alcohol. And part of that is because, I'm growing everything. All the vineyards are coming from regions that are very close to the ocean, meaning it has a moderating effect. So it's not so hot. So they're cooler regions because of the ocean's moderating effect.
She's not saying diurnal. Thank you for not saying that.
I'm not that much of a wine geek. I love my wines. But
okay. And part of this, like, we're going back to everything, like to the Tetra Pak, to like is turning the tide of climate change. Is that kind of?
So that's exactly
Okay.
starting with my passion for the water, wanting to make sure that I am protecting waterways. So all the vineyards, very first thing I wanted to do was to make sure none of my vineyards were
Irrigated.
farmed with glyphosate. So like
Okay.
Roundup weed killer. Because that's something that does get into the waterways. And so I was really wanting to make sure we're not going to use any harmful pesticides or herbicides that are going to get into the water.
Okay.
And so that was like the original like kind of North Star. And then I grew from there to, certify organic and that, but it really came from making sure I wanted to protect the waterways. So turning the tide on climate change by turning the tide on the way that we're farming and the way that we're looking to protect our water for future generations, because water is our life. Water is our lifeblood.
Yeah. It was dry here on the East Coast. Like I didn't have to cut my grass for like a month because it didn't rain, which was kind of cool.
Convenient. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But I'm that guy because I lived in California. Like most people weren't watering, but you see the person who's watering the lawn. I'm like, fucking dick. Are you kidding me? Like that's water. Don't you know what's going on in the world?
Yep.
So you could have a green lawn. Like everybody else's lawn is brown. We're okay with it. Like you could have I was like, wow, you're a dick. Like it's like not even like to make something for grass.
Right.
Yeah. Not even weed grass, just grass. Just
exactly.
It's not even,
the right grass.
yeah.
The wrong
Come
grass.
on, man.
The right grass we could be
Yeah,
accepting of. Yeah.
Listen, man, that's a sustainable plant. So, first of all, this Pinot, I have to say, so I am 54, so I was like in the height of Parker. Big wines, big flavor, big fruit. Is this so tasty at 13? Just the color, the extraction of the color. The fruit is really sweet, but it's a dry wine, but the fruit is really sweet. Beautiful. I get all the perfume, but like how sweet black cherry fruit this is at 13% alcohol is astounding to me.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's exactly what I saw. Kind of being in that Napa world, kind of growing up in the wine industry, in that big wines, high alcohol, like let's put it in the fermenter for 2 months and just like extract everything we can.
Playing Shaggy Boombastic in the winery.
Exactly.
That just came like.
That just made my day.
They call me Mr. Boombastic. All those cult wines racking up the scores.
Yep.
Boom, boom. All right.
What were you talking about?
We were talking about you saw all these, the boom bap of wine and the Beats by Dr. Dre of wine, and you said, can we just turn that down to like an 8 and it'll still be good or whatever.
Yep.
I'm just giving you,
Yep, totally. Well, I think those high alcohols like really don't showcase the fruit very well, and so I actually lower alcohols I think brings out some of the savoriness. I'm not a huge fan of the big ripe fruit, and I think that's part of it is just because I think it's been done. I wanted to try something different. So the lower alcohols do show a little bit more of that spice and savoriness, and
There's like a licorice anise thing on the nose for sure. But I've always said grape is a fruit. I need some fruit in it.
yeah,
This
you need
is
some
delivered.
fruit,
Yeah.
for sure. Exactly. But I also wanted some of the spiciness too, and I think
Yeah, I got it.
yeah, you're kind of balancing all those things in order to make it a food wine. Those big high alcohol wines, like they really aren't food wines.
Sure you are.
With
With a burger. You don't eat
with the burger,
burgers.
yeah, that's true.
Exactly. I'm like, yeah, or some duck. Yeah, anything. I mean, I go in, man.
Yeah,
But I for me, it's not about how much alcohol is. Does the wine taste good, right? Because I think there's people who are picking too fucking early just to make a point.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Weirdos.
Agreed. Yeah, you still have to have some sort of flavor.
Yeah,
There's still.
yeah.
I always you can't flavor comes from the vine. You can't do anything in your fermentation,
Right.
hot, cold, however you
Right.
want to ferment,
Right.
however many punch downs you want to do.
Right.
You're not going to find flavor in there if it doesn't exist. So I think that's what happens when you pick too early. They become like very one-dimensional. And so really like finding that sweet spot of, not too ripe, but not too early is, what I've been trying to do.
And what's interesting is, so what's your total case production right now across how many SKUs?
I mean, I've actually surprisingly, I think I did 3,000 cases this year.
Okay.
Which is, for really being my first year out doing my own
nice.
business. Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
And I've had your Chenin Blanc. Amazing.
Yes, that's right. We had it at dinner. We had
Yes.
some fun
Asian
Chinese
food,
food
yeah.
last time
Yep.
I was in
Yes,
town.
we did. We had duck. You should have been here.
I would have given you mine.
Yeah.
I would have ate it.
And the roast pork.
Oh.
But we did get some scallops and shrimp for us. Like,
Oh, yeah. So good.
And the Chenin
Some
was
green
perfect
beans-
with that.
green
Oh, man.
beans.
And the sauteed green beans.
I still remember those.
Yeah.
The pig pull.
Oh, yeah. Did you bring the pork?
I didn't have it then.
You didn't have it then?
I made a bunch of new wines
Okay.
this year.
All right. Same address. You can send it to me.
I know where you live.
Yeah, I live. Harmon.
Yep.
Somebody hooked me up.
Yep.
Um,
I know. Well, I'm out here because my my distributor, Harmon and Michael Skernick, had a wine tasting yesterday. And so I was out showcasing some of my new wines. So these are two of my new wines that they wanted me to come pour and show off.
Nice. So you're at like 3,000 across I know you have, how many different Pinots do you have?
So I have a Turning Tide Pinot that is
Yep.
my Willamette
Yep.
Pinot, my single vineyard Pinot,
Yep.
and then the Rare North is the
Okay.
Willamette Valley Pinot.
Okay.
And then I made a Cabernet and a Sauvignon Blanc that are certified organic.
Those are the AJ.
So those are these two. This one,
Yep.
certified organic from the Central Coast. And then I have a red and white blend. So the Chenin Blanc is the base of my white blend. I also blend a little bit of Verdeo into it, which is from my personal vineyard in the Santa Ynez Valley, and it's it's
Will flex.
that's a really
Congratulations,
fun
though.
wine.
That's
Thank
cool.
you, thank you. Fun to be a landowner. And then my red wine, the base of that is also from that same vineyard. That's Grenache and Mourvedre that I picked together, ferment together, and it's kind of inspired from traveling through the Rhone area where you just have these delicious, crafts of wine on your table, and it's simple and light and refreshing, and goes well with lunch, and lower in alcohol.
Yeah. So you making wine for Target. You did Bandit.
Yeah, I helped Bridget with that many years ago.
That was years ago, yeah.
Yeah.
Joel Gott is a pretty big winery.
I've heard. Uh-huh.
Yeah. How many cases were they doing when you left?
I mean, I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you. So
You could try. But I know it's probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions of cases of wine. And then so how does that inform the site-specific stuff you're doing now?
yeah, so I think that's a lot of what I saw is there's all these super amazing areas, and I thought it was cool, and it was a great opportunity to make these blends. And so, Joel Gott Wine World, it was how can I make the best California blend possible of Sauvignon Blanc? And that was by finding fruit in all these different regions. So, Lake County, I got some lemon lime from Lake County, and I got some tropical notes from the Central Coast, and I made these blends together. But the cool thing about Turning Tide is now I'm highlighting each of the regions a little bit more specifically, and really felt like the Central Coast, specifically had so many great kind of little microclimates that really haven't been discovered yet, and so I wanted to show them off, and that's part of what I was doing with Turning Tide. And then I created these two more value brands because I also don't feel I don't want to necessarily, scare people off by being that wine geek. I want to say you don't have to know about all these different AVAs to love wine.
Or what CCOF means even.
You don't have to know what that is either.
Exactly.
So I wanted to highlight these, my brand new wine that I didn't mention yet is called AJ, my Cabernet from California. And then the Rare North is sort of that other piece of the value wine from Oregon. And these are supposed to be wines that are fun, that are wines you can have every day and wines that you have with your friends. And, you know, you can talk about what you taste in it, but you can also just enjoy it and, you know, have fun. So that's sort of the difference between the two wines.
What percentage of the population you think actually gives a shit about like bricks and terroir and stuff?
Jewelry, soils.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, probably not that many.
Yeah.
And I don't want to. I think that wine needs to be more inclusive. I think that wine should be open for everybody. I think that, you know, I want to talk about, because I can be a wine geek sometimes, and I do want to talk about those things in Turning Tide and that passion of it. But I also want to make sure that, you know, I have wines that are, you know, just drink it. If you like it, enjoy it. And it doesn't matter if you don't know what jewelry soils are. So that's a lot of kind of the other piece of what I want to do. And with sustainability, it is part of, like, you need that value. You can't be sustainable if you're really expensive. You can't, you know, kind of afford it. But then also it's part of being inclusive, I think, is having some more valuable wines.
I would debate that with you. I think you can be more sustainable the more you cost, actually. Because luxury doesn't go on sale, right? So like that's why a lot of people come out the box that way. But I appreciate what you're saying, 100%. But yeah, I mean that's the flip side. I'm not a fan of, hey, I made all this .com money. I'm gonna have a Napa Valley Cabernet. It's gonna cost $500. My first vintage. I hired this enologist, and I got grapes from here, and I got this winemaker. I'm not the hugest fan of that, but it's like, you know, it's America, and you know we're Americans. You get a little waiting list. You only have a little scarcity, and you'll never
like that pizza place we tried to go to last time I was in town.
Yeah, man.
5-hour wait.
Yeah, we didn't wait 5 hours, and because I'm not that guy, I didn't want to be like, hey, I know that owner be like, hey man, we're here. Can we get in? I was like, let's just go somewhere else. You can listen to that show. It's season 2, I believe. Season 2 or season 3. Environmentally conscious farming. That jumped out at me. What is ECF?
So that encompasses everything that you're doing. So I think, you know, when you're talking about just organics, you're just talking about the farming part. But if you go into like the bigger piece of it, sustainability and more environmentally conscious of everything around you, you're bringing in all these different elements. So it's not just the way that you farm; it's also making sure you're protecting your worker safety. That's a huge part of it. Making sure you're paying your workers enough. So sustainability is actually all encompassing of all these different things. And I had a hard time, like, I think sustainability is one of those words that gets thrown around that's hard to define.
Like natural wine.
Yeah, that is hard to define as well. What does that mean to you?
Oh, well, I mean, I had Alice firing on. I dropped that episode on Monday. It was great. She actually gave me the clearest definition. I mean, for at least it did have to start with organic farming, but a lot of people, it's just like, nope, it's my dirty feet.
Yep.
These crazy grapes, not doing anything to it. At least she does have some, you know, but it is literally words that get thrown around a lot. We'll take natural wine off the table. I'll give you a break, natural wine. But like you said, sustainability, you know, another authenticity, transformation. There's these words that don't mean anything that get thrown around a lot.
Right.
I mean, they used to mean something. So I was going to say, what's the difference in kind of biodynamic versus organic, right? What's the kind of like, isn't biodynamic a little bit more in tune with nature than just organic, if I understand it correctly?
Yeah, it's sort of the next level. And so not only are you watching the cycles of the moon, and I think we all know there is something to that, you know.
Listen, if the moon can cause hurricanes, it could make us do some crazy shit. I'm just sorry.
You know, it influences tides. You can see it. Right. So it must influence other things as well. So
70% of Earth's surface is water. I'm just not a reach here.
Children are batshit crazy with the moon.
Oh, right.
Yeah, but so you're watching cycles in nature.
So it's a little bit more watching cycles.
There also is no harmful pesticides. It's regenerative, like planting the right cover crops and things to help the soil.
Yeah,
or
cover
something?
crops and trying to insert specific things in your vineyard. So kind of like when you're drinking, kombucha or something, you're trying to, have natural probiotics,
It's our fantasy,
right? So it's like the
I'm
vineyard
hungover. I'm just
probiotics.
going to drink some kombucha. It's natural.
That's what we're drinking right now.
Exactly. It's natural.
About as natural as a liquid IV.
But environmentally conscious, if I heard you correct, you're also taking in like wages and working conditions
Yeah, so it's
and
a little bit
packaging
more holistic.
and
Yep, packaging. I think that is that's huge. And nobody can come out of the gate. And I didn't want to use the word sustainability necessarily because it is thrown around a lot. And so I created my own sort of definition with environmentally conscious farming. So it really should encompass the social equity part of sustainability. So I mean, there is a real definition for sustainability.
Yeah.
But part of it is social equity, and it is making sure that you're everything that you're doing. Obviously, part of Turning Tide, part of the dandelion that I have on my label, is every little thing that goes into wine. There's all these pieces that go in that make the bottle complete, and part of that's people. Part of that is you for helping get my message out there. Part of that's Bridget for helping
helping me help you get your message out there.
Exactly. So it's everything that went into
The color
that
on this thing.
bottle.
I can't believe this is like a little 13%. Just Willamette. It's not even like site specific.
Yeah, $25 retail.
Damn.
I want to get good wine out there to people and show them, hey, this is, it could be your everyday house wine.
It's got a little funk on it too. It's good.
Yeah.
Shiny.
Yeah.
Pinot's got to have a little something.
You gotta have a little something.
That's what makes it fun.
So let's talk a little bit about the vineyards you own. Landowning white female. I got to say that. It's the first time I ever worked into a podcast.
That was pretty good.
No.
Very good.
She's like, no, I'm not that.
Well, that part I will give a shout out because when I was working with Joel Got Wines, I had 120 vineyards all over California and Oregon. No females, no female owner, no female farm manager. The farming side is really challenging for females to break into, even if they want to. It's hard to play in that world, and that part I think is really exciting because I can say I'm a female vineyard owner, and there's not that many of us out there. There should be more, but that's part of what I was saying. I want to be like that, hopefully be a mentor to the next female landowner. And yeah, you can work with all these, more kind of male cowboys and you show them that you have great ideas, that you're smart, that you can work just as hard. And so that part is exciting. So I have one vineyard that's 17 acres that has my Mourvedre, my Grenache, my Verdeo that I make in my blends. And then it has a bunch of Italian varieties too that we sell to a lot of local Italian winemakers. And then my other vineyard is...
I love Calatales.
Yeah.
We got some Barbera in there, some Sangiovese. I love it.
We do.
Because for me, that's where California just wins. Because it just not as rustic as they can be traditionally in Italy. MJ's gonna make some wine. This is my MJ's like, what you got going on over there, AJ?
And that's where I park my Airstream trailer. I have it out there in that vineyard.
So you're living in Airstream right now?
I'm living in an Airstream.
She's doing that. That's like the whole deal. The whole deal is you have a trailer, you buy the vineyard, you're making your wine. We get out here, we blow your wines up. Next thing you know, you got the big state-of-the-art winery.
Well, wait, tell him about your winery, because that's another thing that I don't know, a little deep undercover.
Yeah, what's going on?
But
so my partners that I own that vineyard with, and I just started renting.
You mentioned that
one
briefly.
of the old Gallo facilities that was in the Santa Ynez Valley. Called Bridalwood.
I know Bridalwood.
Yeah. Well, now we're renting it we're calling it Milestone, because it is sort of.
I remember when Bridalwood came out, late 90s.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I totally remember that.
Yeah. So
Just
this
sell
was
that
the
shit.
first vintage that I was able to actually like, I was in there like doing the punch downs and pump overs and back into like I hadn't done that in
So they're renting it to you?
20 years. Yeah. So the new owner of the winery is leasing it to us.
Okay.
And he just did this big last weekend. He just did this big regenerative agricultural event, charity event as well. So the owner is like super into wanting to make sure everything is organic, and I just certified the winery organic as well, so I can make certified organic wines in that winery, which is pretty cool because there's not that many wineries that are certified organic. So that was one of the big things that I wanted to get done before harvest.
Okay. So you told us about the one vineyard, 17 acres. What's the other vineyard?
The other vineyard is a 100% organic Sauvignon Blanc vineyard that's also in the Santa Ynez Valley. And
Where's that? Where are these located? Because I kind of know the area.
Yeah. So
What hood you hanging out?
so we're in the valley that is north of Santa Barbara, about 40 minutes north of Santa Barbara. The valley goes east-west. So meaning the end of the valley opens up into the Pacific Ocean. That's the Santa Rita Hills part of the Santa Ynez Valley. And then my vineyards are on the other side of kind of the 101 from there, which is in the more, like a little bit warmer climate Santa Ynez Valley. So the Pinot and Chardonnay is mostly on the kind of closer to the ocean side. And then this is where we're growing more of those kind of red varieties, not quite warm enough to get Cabernet ripe in that region, but it's sort of one of those edgy regions, which is why I liked it. It is not that hot, and it still has that ocean influence. So you have that moderating effect. I won't use the word diurnal, but
you did show some pride when you talked about being a female vineyard owner. Was there what was the thought process? You like I gotta go back to Grandma. I gotta go back to Irene. Like,
Grandma.
land in California ain't shit in California cheap. so
I know.
So
I love California, born and raised, and like I want to keep promoting California. I think it's the best place to be for the wines I want to make. But yeah, it
must have been scary.
Yeah, it's expensive. It's scary. The taking that risk is always a challenge. But I think that's where you get the greatest reward too.
So, you're out here, trip, distributor,
hanging out with Bridget.
Gonna hang out with Brooke later.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Brooke. She's like, yo. Another podcast alumni. Also, I've just found the wine world it's small though. I think
small.
people don't realize that. Again, movies and stuff, but it's small. Like everybody I've had on the show kind of knows everybody.
That's why you never burn a bridge.
Yeah, exactly. So you're out here doing that. You harvesting still though, right? So what's
I have a little bit of Cabernet left.
Okay.
And the Cabernet is from that like Happy Canyon region. And I'm making it for a client because of course, you're starting your own wine label. You got to have little side hustles on the side.
Of course the listeners know that. They don't know that. Yeah. So like talk about that. Because people, I wish I just got 2 podcasts for a living. Let's just put it that way.
Uh-huh.
Like winemakers, right? Like even at the highest level, I think people don't understand. Like that's why people are consulting winemaker at 10 wineries in Napa,
right.
so they can make some freaking money.
Make some money to lose
then,
money in your own label.
So then go buy some freaking land like you did.
Exactly.
And be poor again. But yeah. So like people are like, oh my God, she's amazing. She owns these vineyards. She does, and you are, and you do.
But it's taken a lot of work to get there.
It took a lot of work. I mean, first of all, you worked at a winery that is very big. That sets you up to do these things.
Definitely.
Like, that's a whole nother thing too. I had Greg Brewer on and, like we talked about when he got acquired or we partnered with, like, he was like, on one level, it's such a relief. You don't understand like how hard it is to be this small winemaker.
Yeah,
Like, you know what I mean?
financially, yeah.
You don't have to worry about making payroll anymore. But you know what I mean? Like,
this is why it's a passion. I mean, passions don't always make a lot of money, but you have to have that passion.
worst
for
advice ever: follow your passion. You should follow your passion, but don't think
think
that's
it's
not the
gonna
key.
make a lot of
It's
money.
not the key to success.
No.
I mean, unless success is doing what you want in life, which that ultimately should be success. But I read a lot of. I used to read a lot of books. I work with kids, and I was like, that's the worst advice. Is like,
Oh yeah.
follow your dream per se. Like let's
Right.
unpack that.
Yeah.
What do you want your life to look like? If you're okay with this, driving a Honda Accord, you know,
Yeah.
blah
it's
blah,
true.
then go for it. And there's nothing wrong with driving a Honda Accord, but just don't. But it's
Yeah.
often said to people, oh, do what you. The money won't necessarily come, but
No.
your fulfillment and joy will come. As I think
Yeah.
you. But
Yeah.
you're still consulting with people.
Yeah, I'm still helping people, and I think that is part of too. Like I do want to keep like using my skills. I want to be able to like make these wines here, but then also if I can consult from different areas, then I still remain like kind of fresh in those areas and still can keep learning. I mean, part of my passion is definitely the learning side of things, and I want to keep learning always. But yeah, what's that Venn diagram that shows you like your real goal in life is to have that overlap between like passion and financial success and some sort of fulfillment.
Right.
And if you can find that like that middle ground, like you're there. But yeah, that's a tough one to get to. And I think we're all striving to be better and to have hopefully like part of Turning Tide is that for me, being able to like really showcase, I want to help, as we all do, I guess, want to help save the world. I want to help, be fulfilled by helping other people, bringing other people along with me with all these different groups. AJ always joining, like bringing people together. And then, yeah, hopefully at some point it helps you financially so you can live. But, it's like that intersection of all of those things is like, what people I think strive for in their careers.
Yeah. So.
Now that I went deep.
Huh?
Now that I went deep, you can take it back.
Yeah. No. Go deeper. So when you worked at GOT, you were based where, up north?
Yeah, I lived in Santa Rosa, and that's one of the reasons that I moved. Besides the fact that I could really find better sort of land values and find opportunities to own vineyards down the Central Coast. But the being evacuated from your house 4 years in a row during harvest. It's a burden on you, physically, but also mentally and everything else, and trying to figure out how you're going to make wine. And meanwhile, your employees are evacuated as well, and it's the busiest time of year, and you can't get to your vineyards because there's road closures, and it's crazy. That fire season really was a challenge in those the last 5 years or so up there. And
yeah, didn't Santa Rosa actually got hit?
Yeah, in the middle of the night, 3 a.m. That's when our Target and our Hilton burned down, and the big community of Coffee Park. It was one of those really surreal experiences.
I will tell you, as an East Coast guy, I lived in California 10 years, Santa Barbara, but my last 2 years, fires. I was like near fires.
Yeah.
And there is nothing.
So scary.
It's like California weather is interesting because earthquake. Your first time in earthquake, you're like, what was that? Like literally, I'm like.
I grew up with those. It's fine.
Yeah, I know you're fine. But I'm like, wait, that felt like the subway. Because that's only expressed. Like, there's no subway. You're on State Street in Santa Barbara, right? And then like you get,
Right.
you get, there's the shakers, and then the rollers are the most fun because they make the telephone poles and trees like kind of
Right.
go back and forth. Wow.
Yeah, it's like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Those didn't bother
But
me.
fire. I remember the first time I seen a wildfire, and I always say, condition I don't say forest fire because of Smokey the Bear, but like first time you see a wildfire, you just feel so small. Like, and I can only imagine, like, there was one they thought was going to come down to Santa Barbara a couple years ago, and you could just see, like, just the ridge line is just it's the night, it's the ridge line is just on fire, and you see it creeping down, and then you wake up the next morning, and then the sun looks like Mars because there's smoke in the air,
Yeah.
and some people don't know what it's like. So freaking and then you got to get up 3 o'clock in the morning and get out your house.
And you figure out like, what am I taking with me?
Right.
And like that was a reality.
And then you got a job.
Everybody.
Yeah. And you're saying, and like, we got to get these grapes. But
and then also we have grapes that we're supposed to be harvesting today. Like, how am I supposed to do all these things and not freak out about my house burning down? Yeah. It is pretty amazing though what you think you need to like take with you, you know. And that was like one of the things I started to pack, and like, you know what, all this stuff is, you know, I can buy it again, it's fine. But it is pretty crazy to think that we went through all those years of fires up there. I mean, I hope, like, you know, this year we got some rain during harvest, and so, you know.
Well, I was up there, and I was actually in Sonoma, and I was like, man, it's
you can still
so dry. I mean, and we flew, and I got it in a helicopter, so you could see where things had burned. But like, you know, I forgot how arid it is.
California is a desert.
Yeah, it's a desert. People don't really like it's, and like, and I was just conscious because, like I said, we were in a drought in Jersey, and I was like, man. So hopefully, yeah, fire season. You know, that's always scary. So you're down the Central Coast, and they do have fires on it, but it's just it's not the same as like Santa Rosa is like, isn't it like the county seat? Like it's like a big city.
It's a big city.
Yeah, it's a big city
it's
to
a big
be
city to have a
fire come through it. Yeah,
yeah.
We're not talking like, you know,
the stuff never comes through at 2 in the afternoon either. It's always in the middle of the night.
Always,
right? Like
always.
Apocalyptic.
Yeah. Fire. You know, fires watch Backdraft. Like, yeah, that's how you do it.
That's right.
Like, you nailed it. Yeah, that's what we do. We're insidious.
Yeah, but that all kind of correlates to the whole climate
and I'm
change
saying, and then you're back to turning tides, right? Like
exactly.
How do we stop these forest fires? Like what are we doing?
Right, exactly. No, and I mean, I think, you know, part of it is, part of it's like coming together and realizing that we're all in it. You know, we're all part of this. You know, like we see climate change happening right before our eyes. So we all need to like take action.
Yeah. So when I was out there, I'd love to get your thoughts on a lot of the fires, particularly in Sonoma. So how do we get people? How do we get? And I don't know how it's gonna sound, but I'm not so much in corporate activism, but like, it's the fucking power lines. Why don't they put the power lines underground?
Yeah, we could go
like that's what happens. Like lightning strikes a power line,
yep.
and then fucking shit burns down.
Yep. Yeah,
and
because
because
we buried them yet?
Because we're pulling in record profits. Why would we reinvest
in infrastructure? Yeah, why would we do that?
I mean, that when we were on the helicopter, and the guy was telling us like, yeah, that one was started by a power line. That was started by a down power line. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
That's so preventable.
It is preventable. Yep. Yeah, I mean, you can go into the fact that I mean, why do we still have like utilities that are so important to us being held by, you know, private companies?
Yeah.
Like, why isn't the government helping take care of some of that stuff more?
Yeah,
I mean, you can get really political on this.
Yeah, I know. I'm not even that guy, but like,
yeah.
I think about some things. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense.
Some of the shit that goes on in this country, like, how's that make sense? Like, gas was like $7 a gallon in California.
Yeah, it is.
Right.
It is. It makes you not want to drive.
But they made the most money ever last quarter.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty insane.
And listen, make your money, but like this is insane. This is insanity.
And they know we're kind of stuck in California too, because we don't have public transportation like you guys do out here.
People don't even know. That's a whole nother like.
We can't,
oil companies made sure
stuck.
You didn't have it.
Right? We're stuck. Like, we have to fill up our big trucks with that $7 gas.
That always amazed me too. Like, everybody has a huge SUV in Cal. I'm like, how do people? Seriously, listen, it's just, I don't know how people live in California because it's expensive. And like, if you look at what the average income is, how are you spending $125 a week to fill up a Denali or whatever the hell you're driving?
Oh, my Ford truck. Because you need a truck if you're,
you need a truck.
You're hauling barrels, you're putting like big
going up mountains,
in the
you
back.
need power.
Like, I mean, we need our big vehicles if you're like, you know, in ag and, you know, towing stuff around, throwing bins of grapes in the back, whatever. But my truck, it would stop at $175 at the gas pump, and it wasn't even full. I mean, you said 125. I'm like, no, that's cheap.
Oh my God, I'm sick.
Like, oh, that's 3/4 full. That's awesome.
You're like, shit. I could have bought a nice big 15.5 Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon.
Oh, instead, yes, I could have.
Exactly. With a cork and a heavy bottle with a deep punt.
And order a big steak.
Exactly. Yes, from down in Neiman Ranch, right? It's across up to 5.
Up to 5.
So now that we've depressed you all and talked about, the issues that you're actually trying to deal with a little bit. I mean, you're doing your part. You're doing more than your part. You're doing several people's part.
I am trying, and I think a lot of that is the giving back and educational piece of it. I helped start a task force that is helping wineries deal with wildfires, deal with smoke exposure on the educational piece. And then I'm also a co-chair of a big committee for the Unified Grape and Wine Symposium that we have in Sacramento every year. And part of that really is putting on these big seminars and educating the industry on, how can we act differently? How, of course, I've been trying to have as much of, everybody believes it, so it works, but as many seminars on trying to be sustainable as possible. How can we learn how to be more sustainable in the winery? How can we learn how to be more sustainable in packaging? So there's a lot of different pieces of that. Yeah, I mean, let's think outside the box. Specifically. So I think
we need to
think inside the box.
Drink inside the box.
Drink inside the box.
So
let's coin that term now.
Yes, that one's free. You can take that one and run with it.
I'm writing it
I
down
know.
now.
I'm like, God damn it, Bridget. She's like, exactly. She's like,
Get that
yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
So we're gonna play a little game. Shout out to Brooke, Sabel, and Simone for this, because she was on here. She's like, you know what you should do? I'm like, that's a good idea. We're gonna play FMK, fuck, marry, kill.
Oh no.
All right, so yeah, we're gonna give you 3 grapes. You get to fuck one, you get to marry one, and you have to kill one. Pinot Noir, Cabernet, and Grenache.
Oh, that's easy.
Okay.
Cabernet kill.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Pinot Noir is the sensual one. And then I think the Grenache is the one that's what I make. Actually, the Grenache I think is more of my passion. That one is like the one that you would marry, that you would stick with forever.
You're gonna marry Grenache?
Yeah, I'm gonna marry Grenache.
And you're gonna...
She fucks with Pinot. Because you know what she does? She's like, I'll fuck with that Pinot in Oregon.
Yep.
Used to fuck with that Pinot down in Chile. Got my Chilean Pinot. Down in New Zealand.
Grenache is forever.
Yeah.
Grenache is about slutty,
yeah. Grenache is like, you can count on Grenache every time.
You can count on Grenache. Yep. What about you?
Of those 3, same. I would kill Cab. It's not my favorite, unfortunately. I mean, I know it's so storied and everything, but so that's easy for me. And then, I would marry Grenache, because I always say Pinot Noir wants to be Grenache when it grows up. But Pinot, can be lovely.
Pinot can be lovely.
Can be lovely. It could be big. It could be slutty. Pinot's like, you could meet a Pinot in a bar and want to fuck with it. So.
Bridget, are you in agreement here?
Sure. I am. Definitely killing Cab.
No, I love Cab. I made a lot of
No,
Cab
I know,
in my
but
life.
we're playing a game. But I mean,
Yeah.
I will tell people, I'll drink a Syrah before I'll drink a Cab. I'll drink a Shout Enough to Pop. And then if I do go Bordeaux varietals, and I'm a right bank guy, I go to Sauvignon. I like a Merlot Cab Franc blend. Just, I don't know. It's just
Merlot
me.
is underrated. I think Merlot can be really nice.
Merlot's so underrated.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Merlot is kind of what Cab wants to be, I think, a little bit.
Oh well, yeah. When you go to Bordeaux and you understand right bank, left bank, and then you come back and then you have like our Carneros Merlot. I was actually talking to someone about Carneros Merlot. People don't realize, people just think Chard, Pinot, and Carneros, but the fucking Merlot there is pretty sick, you know. Or when you get a really nice Merlot based out of Havens Borico Merlot Cab Franc. Used to love that shit.
Oh yeah, that's a throwback.
Washington Merlot, Andrew Will stuff. I mean, so many, but like yeah, I mean, absolutely. You know, I ain't drinking any fucking Merlot. Made a lot of people drink bad Pinot, but now they don't have to because you're making good, affordable Pinot out of it.
You don't have to drink bad Pinot.
I know.
Life's too short for that.
But that's the thing, right? Like,
yep.
you know the marketing machine.
Yeah.
Right.
Pinot can be confusing. It's it can show itself off in lots of different ways. And I think it can be tough. So I think finding some good examples of well-made Pinot that it's consistent from year to year, and I think that's one thing that that I want to try to. Oregon can have these big swings from vintage to vintage. You know, the weather up there is a little bit more. Yeah. So trying to understand that and trying to guide the fermentation so that they are a little bit more consistent from year to year.
Yeah. All right. So before we wrap up, one last question: what are you most excited for in the future?
I'm excited for like the team. Like really, it does come back to people. I'm excited for the new teams that I'm building, the people that I have at the winery this harvest, bringing more people into that in the next couple years, teaching more people, and having my new sales team. I think that there's a lot of fun out in the future, and yeah, it's about working with great people and the people that you love and people that you want to keep working with.
AJ, which is my mother's initials. We talked about it. Remember that?
We did talk about that.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks
I'm glad we got to do this. Tell people where they can find you, how they can be a part of what you're doing.
Yeah, well, I have my website, turningtidewines.com. You can buy all of the wines I have on the website, but also I have some good retail partners. Whole Foods has been great in supporting me on my certified organic wines, so you can find them there. And then, of course, Michael Skurnick and Harmon that do the distribution for me out in New York.
They don't yeah, okay. Their sales team.
Yeah.
It's a little, there you go, Harmon.
They have a great team.
They do have a great team, for sure. And for all you listeners out there, don't forget to check out the show notes for each episode. That's where you'll find info on the wine we drink in this episode, links to cool things we discussed. I might even put that CCOF in there.
That's a pretty good idea.
And so much more. Until the next time, cheers to all the Mavericks, the philosophers, the deep thinkers, and the wine drinkers. Peace.